Всім доброго дня.
Hello, everybody.
Будемо починати зібрання. Давайте присядемо, займемо місця.
Let us sit down and take our places.
Сьогодні перед початком зібрання я тут сидів, а Андрій Юхименко підходив і казав, ну що, ти вже молився? Я кажу, вже помолився. Він казав, плакав. На що я здивувався, ніколи в нього такого не чув, але мені здалося, що це
sitting and Andrei Yukhamenko came up to me and he said,
я не знаю, як
he
у вас,
asked,
у мене це не
have you
сама
prayed?
улюблена книга була.
I said, yes. And he asked, have you cried? I was surprised because I was going to share from Lamentations, and I reread this book now, and I think there are very valuable things among the horrors about which the prophet talks. Jerusalem is occupied, and the prophet describes the state and the events of horror. He describes how Jerusalem and all other places in the nation are ruined, and the nation is oppressed, and God punishes them. If we do not know the context, we can think that God is unfair and awful and very cruel, but if we know the story, the history of Jewish nation, we see that God is fair. He's not cruel. He is very long patient. For decades and maybe centuries, he asked the nation to repent, and they repented, but then they went away from God again, and God was sending prophets, and the nation repented, but then they went away again, and at last it happened that the northern kingdom was taken to captivity, and Jerusalem and the southern kingdom was captured, occupied, and the nation reaped the fruit of its life without God. But it's interesting that God sends his prophets, and they appeal to turn to the truth of God. But when we think, we look at other people, and even when I look at myself, my first reaction is to defend myself in front of God, and to justify myself in front of God and in front of people, even if I am criticized in kindness. But my first reaction is to put fence between myself and the criticism. And I think in the modern world, when God talks to us, we should not say, no, God, you are wrong in our heart, but to look in our heart, in our life, and to see whether we should change something there. And a second part is that we should look at the prophet and see what he suffers, what he goes through. Because if I would say some words of criticism, my words probably would be hollow, but prophet knows what he talks about. He says, I am the husband who saw the grief from his from him. He puts his hands on me. He has exhausted my body and my skin, and he has fenced me around. He has made my shackles heavy, and when I cry and weep, he does not want to hear me. He has mixed my roads. He has put me as he has cast arrows into my kidneys.
якщо не помиляюсь, його пророче служіння було близько 50 років.
This prophet had a ministry of about 50 years, and he was not respected.
Зрадником називали. Йому не вірили, слухати.
He was called a betrayer. He was put
наситив мене гіркотою, мене напоїв полином, і стер мені зуби жорствою.
He was suffered. He has filled me with bitter herbs. He has broken my teeth with gravel. I have been deprived of peace. I have forgotten. So I say, my splendor is gone, and all that I had hoped from the Lord. Among all of these, he went through. He continued to rely on God. I will remember them, and my soul is downcast. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning, great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. It is good for a man to bear the yoke while he is young. Let him sit alone in silence, for the Lord has laid it on him. Let him bury his face in the dust. There may yet be hope. Let him offer his cheek to one who would strike him, and let him, for men are not cast off by the Lord forever. Though, for he does not willingly bring to crush underfoot all, to deny a man his rights before the Most High, to deprive a man of justice, would not the Lord see such things? Who can speak and have it happen if the Lord has not decreed it? If God gives suffering, it's not for his, because he just wants to give suffering to person. Why should any living man complain when punished for his Lord? Let us examine our ways. Let us lift up our hearts and our hands to God in heaven. This I wanted to address to myself first, but to us all also. Let us look for our roads and lift our heart and our hands, our arms to Lord, and let us pray. Our great Lord, you are a God who has created everything. You are the only one who has the right to see what is good and what is evil. And whether people are good or bad, you are the only one who has the right to say whether we are sinful or not. And you say that everybody has sinned in front of you, and nobody can cast in your face that we can be compared to you, that we can present in front of you our good intentions or our good deeds and say that we are without sin. Every one of us had some actions or motives which are not good. Please forgive us, Lord. Let us look at ourselves and let us be honest in front of you and in front of ourselves, and not to be self-justified, but to know that our only justification is in you. Your Son has died for us. We will remember it today, and we want to be thankful for that, Lord, and sing to you in our joy and bow down to you. Even if you punish, nobody can say that you are not fair, Lord, because you, Lord, can do it and have the right to do it, but you are long patient and you have a lot of mercy to us. Please bless this meeting and our worship, and let us hear your word, Lord. Amen.
чудова, оселя Твоя, Господь всемогутній. О, як прагну, знемагаю я у Твоїм домі бути.
Наповнюєш душу живою водою, і я Твоє дитя. Наповнюєш душу живою водою, і я Твоє дитя. Господь Бог, Спасителю мій, день і ніч я кличу Тебе, хай молитва моя лине, почуй голос мій. Ти наповнюєш душу живою водою, і я Твоє дитя. Живою водою, і я Твоє дитя. Наповнюєш душу живою водою, і я Твоє дитя. Наповнюєш душу живою водою, і я Твоє дитя. Алілуя, алілуя. Чудова, оселя Твоя, Господь всемогутній. О, як прагну, знемагаю я у Твоїм домі бути.
Бог ти цар мого життя, скеля ти, ще моє ім'я, вода, яку я п'ю, о, тебе хвалю. Бог ти цар мого життя, ти мов тінь у спеку дня, до тебе прагну я, о, тобі хвала. Ти благий, Бог, ти благий, ти благий, Бог, ти благий, ти благий, Бог, ти благий, ти благий, Бог, ти благий. Мого життя і терпи для корабля, мов яді в штормі дні, о, хвала Тобі. Бог ти цар мого життя, Твоє світло бачу я, свій шлях кажи мені, о, хвала Тобі. Ти благий, Бог, ти благий, ти благий, Бог, ти благий, ти благий, Бог, ти благий, ти благий, Бог, ти благий. моя рука в твоїй руці. Не боюся далі йти, моя рука в твоїй руці. Не боюся далі йти, моя рука в твоїй руці. Не боюся далі йти, моя рука в твоїй руці. Ти благий Бог, ти благий, ти благий Бог, ти благий, ти благий Бог, ти благий, ти благий Бог, ти благий.
Як стихає спів, немає більше слів, я до тебе йду. Хочу принести цінне щось тобі за любов твою. До неба лине хвала, та не просто в словах, тобі потрібно не це. Таємні бачиш думки, знаєш мрії мої, твій погляд в серце моє.
Тобі всім серцем своїм вклоняюсь.
Ти достойний хвали, достойний хвали, Ісус.
Пробач, що часто я забуваю, що потрібен лиш ти, потрібен мені Ісус.
О, величний цар, ти життя віддав, цей безцінний скарб,
Це безцінний скарб.
і хоч я слабкий, знаю, що живу завдяки тобі.
Тобі всім серцем кланюсь, ти достойний хвали, лиш це. Таємні бачиш думки, знаєш мрії мої, твій погляд в серце моє. Тобі всім серцем своїм вклоняюсь. Ти достойний хвали, достойний хвали, Ісус. Пробач, що часто я забуваю, що потрібен лиш ти, потрібен мені Ісус. Тобі всім серцем своїм вклоняюсь. Ти достойний хвали, достойний хвали, Ісус. Пробач, що часто я забуваю, що потрібен лиш ти, потрібен мені Ісус.
Потрібен лиш ти,
Потрібен лиш ти,
потрібен мені,
потрібен мені Ісус.
потрібен лиш ти,
Потрібен лиш ти,
потрібен мені.
Сідайте, будь ласка, зараз дітей запрошуємо
Please
до
be
сцени.
seated, and we are inviting kids to the stage.
Привіт, друзі.
Hello,
Знаєте, що сьогодні для
friends.
вас там приготували
Do you
багато
know
чого.
that
Класно.
a lot
Я туди
is
заходив, я б сам там
prepared
залишився,
for you
але треба буде
today?
тут.
I would like to take part in what has been prepared for you, but I have to be here. We will pray today, and you know that our first prayer is led by kids. Who will help me today?
Ну, якщо нема, то давайте.
If nobody, then
Я буду
let
молитися
us.
без мікрофона. Для чого? Для
I
того,
will
щоб
pray
усі чули,
without
що
microphone
ми
for
говоримо,
everybody
і
to
щоб кожен
listen
чув своє
what
слово.
we
Так?
say, and for everybody
Діти, я прошу вас
to
бути лідерами
hear
зараз.
his
Лідерами в молитві.
words. And people, kids, I ask you to be leaders in the prayer. The prayer is Our Father. Our Father who is in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, both on heaven as on earth. Please give us our daily bread and forgive us our transgressions as we forgive our transgressors. And do not put us into temptation, but
Так що хорошого вам часу бажаємо.
liberate us from the cunning ones. So, kids, those who
Діти
were in
можуть
the
іти,
camp,
а дорослі у нас своя недільна школа.
will continue, and kids can go to Sunday school, and adults have our own worship.
Я знаю, о чем вы думаете. Наверное, о том же, о чем и я.
I know what you think about.
Кинотеатр, и там
Maybe the same what I think about. When you come to a cinema, you have possibility to go to different films, to different halls. You sometimes buy a ticket to one film, but think that why shouldn't I go? Why don't I go to another?
Энергия и жажда знания. Сегодня мы будем говорить, у нас же был День знаний недавно, так?
Today we're going to talk about the fact that we had the Day of Knowledge just recently. This is also an interesting day where all of a sudden there's more people in the street, double the traffic, faster the traffic, and they're going everywhere. And that means that the very day came, the day when people go to school and university, and today our talk is going to be about the meaning and usefulness of knowledge. And we're going to read from the book of Ecclesiastes that we don't read much from, we don't preach much on, but we're going to read Ecclesiastes 1:12. Ecclesiastes was the king in Israel over Jerusalem, and I gave my heart to study everything that is done after the earth. That is a hard task that God gave to the Son of Man for them to exercise in it. I saw everything that is done under the sun, and everything is vanity. What is twisted cannot be straightened, what is lacking cannot be counted. I thought to myself, look, I have grown and increased in wisdom more than anyone who was ruler over Jerusalem before me. I have experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. Then I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also to madness and folly, but I learned that this is too is chasing after the wind. With much wisdom come much sorrow, and the more knowledge, the more grief. And then we skip some of the verses of the second chapter, and we go to 2:12, and read a couple of verses here, a continuation of the wisdom. Then I turned my thought to consider wisdom and also madness and folly. What more can the king's successor do that what has already been done? I saw that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. The wise man has eyes in his head, while the fool walks in the darkness. But I came to realize that the same fate overtakes them both. Then I thought in my heart, the fate of the fool will overtake me also. What then do I gain by being wise? I said in my heart, this too is meaningless. For the wise man, like the fool, will not be long remembered. In the days to come, both will be forgotten. Like the fool, the wise man too must die. And so here, in this book, and actually in the text that we just read, there are many words that look outdated a little bit, not clear, and even Ecclesiastes himself is not clear. In our translation in Russian, and actually in English too, it's called Ecclesiastes, or the preacher. In Greek, ecclesia means church or meeting place, and that's how they said, we're going to go to ecclesia. Here we're going to go to a place where we meet. So Ecclesiastes is a person who is part of something, of gathering people. So he's probably a preacher if he's getting everybody into a meeting. They didn't really have Sunday services like we have today, and often when people would get together, like today they do in synagogues, they would get together to listen to a teacher, like Jesus was a teacher. He was called rabbi, and the believers at that time were not called like we are called now Christians, but they were called disciples or followers. For all of us believers, still Knowledge Day, the September topic, is very close to heart. So the book of Ecclesiastes, or the preacher or the teacher, and I also read in another book just recently, a wonderful new book was just published, Returning to Edom. I don't know if it was printed in Russian, but definitely in English, and it is devoted to this topic. So there is a comparison of Ecclesiastes to a guide, or a tour guide. So to a degree, every preacher or a teacher is a tour guide or a guide in general, because indeed we need a teacher, not for us to stick all of that knowledge like into a computer, although we can have access to all of this knowledge. We have a whole computer in our pocket and we can look it up. But we need somebody who will help us find our orientation as to where to find, what to open, what to look at. So the Ecclesiastes preacher, or teacher, or tour guide, or should we say just guide in general, this one who orients us, or the guide. I remember that last Sunday, remember our pastor Andre, he said in the very beginning that I understand that he was burdened, and he said, 5 people called me this morning, and everybody said that we're going to mainly have children, so make sure this is clear to the children. So in other words, do your best to also show guidance to children as well, where to go. And so I'm sitting there thinking, the children who grew up in the city, what do they understand when they hear this word, sheep, shepherd, pastor, and so on? I wish I could draw a picture. I went to the Caucasus in England, and I know a lot of sheep, and I read many, and I saw many pictures, but it's one thing to see a sheep on a picture and then to observe it behaving. So what I want to say is our pastor indeed managed well to describe what was necessary for children. That's why they were attentively listening. But it is an example as to what the word vanity means. That's the first thing that we were even reading. So this is vanity and chasing after the wind. So we remember the very beginning of this book. Vanity of vanities, said the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. And I'm thinking back to my grandmother, and I came to Moscow. I was 17. I was studying. I went to study at this energy university, and I wanted to think of how to make my life more interesting. I enjoyed 2 things in particular back then. First one was fly and do paratrooping. I was dreaming about that. And at that time, secondly, I was playing the violin. And what do you think? I went to conservatory and a technical school in Moscow, and you need to understand to come from one place to another in Moscow takes an hour and a half. And then there's another club, and then half a year later, the Lord called me to himself, so I came and started to visit Sunday services as a believer, and I was invited to choir, so I needed to learn how to sing, and then I have courses. So I have these 4 classes that I'm attending at the same time, and my grandma and I, she was about 80 years old, and we lived together, and I told her about how my day went, how I ran over there, and how I did this thing, so she listened to me, and then said, Sergey, don't be full of vanity. And next time when I came, and she didn't ask me questions, and I said, did you chase after the wind again? So that impressed in my heart so much. And I thought, if I try to encompass everything that's chasing after the wind, and what do you think? Very fast, I couldn't see very well, I couldn't run everywhere, I broke my hand, my wrist, and I was not able to play the violin anymore. Another 10 years later, after graduating from the university and having worked in the energy sector of Kyiv, after that, I was invited to study in Denver, and I left. And then that's when I was calm and at peace. All the vanity was behind me. I had lots of books around me. And from that time on, I'm not chasing after the wind anymore. I'm reading The Life of Wonderful and Beautiful. And my grandma was right. So chasing after the wind is something that is involving something that is going to go away quickly. That's just a vapor when you breathe on the mirror and then it's gone. It is something useless, something, as it was translated in my wonderful, in my favorite translation in English, New International Version, something meaningless. So that's the vanity that we're talking about. And we need to understand clearly what does our guide trying to tell us when he talks about knowledge. Let's keep in mind the day of knowledge, and we are talking about the usefulness of knowledge and wisdom. So since I have been a believer, I am under this double pressure. On one hand, I have many good friends that I respect. One of my close relatives who, when he found out that I want to continue studying at the institute after becoming a believer, he just became a believer and a little older, and he said, don't you remember what it says in the gospel? That knowledge puffs up. And if knowledge makes you arrogant, you don't want to be an arrogant Christian. A Christian can be arrogant, but love builds up. You don't need knowledge. Stop studying at the university, and so on. And you know, again and again, what we hear here, even on the basis, or you were able to hear on the basis of these verses, that indeed the knowledge they bring to sorrow and to sadness and to much sorrow. So why study? So that's on the one hand. And on the other hand, there is indeed a number of books in the Bible that says the books of wisdom. And clearly, these 2 words are put together, knowledge and wisdom, one after another. In order to get wisdom, you need to know something. Just remember the book of knowledge of Solomon, the wisdom of Solomon. We were studying from it recently. We didn't take the entire book, of course, but just one topic on friendship. And we took some of the verses, put them together, and we were observing how to learn from this book. We sort of had a seminar in order to learn how to gain good friends. And indeed, these are good seminars on friendship, on building families. I remember in the Soviet Union, there were some books translated, and people who are older can remember them. For example, books for parents. There was a book by Mr. Spock, and you had to read it in order to understand how to raise your children well. I'm so glad that there are many more other books, because there were so many complex, difficult advice that indeed were not very helpful and actually weren't useful for the child nor the parents, indeed. And there was another book by Carnegie as to how to gain friends and influence people. So we understand that in practical life even, we need knowledge. Wisdom is important. And that's what it says here, that knowledge, we just read in 2:13, that wisdom is better than folly, just as light is better than darkness. We even know those proverbs that studying is light, and there are a lot of people who don't know, but the more you learn, the better. Because if we don't know how to live, how to build something, how to build a relationship or anything, that we're looking for wise people, we're looking for guides who knows how to conduct a seminar or workshop or how to keep going. I know that in this room there is a sea of wisdom because there are wise people in different spheres who know how to organize and lead young people. For example, we learned much last Sunday from them. Or, for example, how to help a person who has trouble or who has trouble with the law. And we have journalists and we have economic specialists. We have lots of knowledgeable and wise people. So I don't want to preach to the choir today, to my first stop of this tour in our tour guide trip, is that wisdom is important. It gives benefits to those who live under the sun. That it is important. That is important for us in everyday life, even as to how to find a spouse, of this friend for life, how to preserve a friendship for life, how to live in harmonic relationship, not just, simple living in, how to raise children together, how to build with others, with other adults, a good harmonious society. And I know, and I have it myself, and I think many of you sometimes have, when you give into towel and decades pass and you don't seem to have learned anything, and probably you're not going to learn anything in the future, both in the family and friends and with children and in society. That happens. Nevertheless, none of us is going to argue that there is a great benefit to have wisdom as opposed to folly. That's what the Bible says. That's what our guide Ecclesiastes says. And I would like to turn the question around a little bit. This topic that we're talking about and look at it from the different side and delve deeper than just practical wisdom. I think I already said once that what struck me specifically when I was younger, it was how one person who was not much older than I. When I studied at the Synergy University, I studied the philosophy faculty at the Moscow University. Definitely believers were not allowed to go there. So when he became a believer, he was kicked out of the university. This was his graduate course. And he said, when he was asked, how did you become a believer? You were a philosopher from the atheistic surroundings. He said, very easy. I started asking questions. Why? For example, a question, why am I studying at a university? And to that question, the answer is to get a diploma. Why get a diploma? In order to work. Why work? In order to earn money. Why money? To build a family. Why family? And then he kept going on and on and on until finally I came to the answer after which there's no question, nowhere to move. I need this to live. And as to question, why live? I did not find an answer. What's the meaning to life? That's what gives the main question. That's our guide, Ecclesiastes, gives us that question. If he is a preacher, whoever you want to say, if he's a preacher, then that's a very weird way of preaching. To begin, vanity of vanities, everything is vanity. There's nothing meaningful in the world. Everything is completely meaningless. It's not his beginning. That's his end at the end. Because in the very last chapter, he repeats this verse once there is the author who says his afterword. So, this topic is especially relevant today. If you are over 45, then you can
который случился после развала Советского Союза.
remember the shock that occurred after the collapse of the Soviet Union, at least a little bit, when the majority of people knew the meaning of life. This meaning of life was about building eventually the type of a society, the type of state that everybody else would look at us and say, "Ooh, we want this too." And although the more we lived in this country that was called the Soviet Union, the more it became, the more cynical people arose, non-believers, dissidents, the ones who exposed lie that this indeed was just words. But if we press on, nevertheless, if we twist in every person who lived, you find one of the two things at the time. Whether this is faith, but it's not in my life, but in the lives of children, if not children, that my grandchildren or great-grandchildren, but eventually this should happen. Because there is progress. Look, finally, we launched the first man to the space. We have hydraulic power stations and all of the propaganda that would be repeated from one holiday to another. And it actually worked. And indeed, we wanted this to be true. For the majority of people in the country where believing in God was practically not allowed or not possible. And if you became the cynic and didn't believe that that could occur eventually, then you had at least the other question. Well, if not so, then I will live my life. However long, many decades I have to enjoy, I will grab to myself. You give to me, I give to you. That was one of the Proverbs back time, and that some of the things that said, yeah, of course, for everybody, we're going to say we need to live for the sake of the communists, and we will understand that we need to grab for ourselves. And everybody grabbed for everywhere they could, at work and at their place. And then it was upside down. And for the people who were 45 back then, it was especially difficult. Who were like me, a little bit over 30, then it was, on the other hand, a holiday, because there are new horizons opening. Now we can build a new life. And you know, how many years passed? 30. I could say that what is happening now is the same type of destruction of ideals that people used to have in today's world. But it's not in one particular country or several countries, several states, let's say socialistic camp, but it is everywhere throughout the world. What was opposed to the developed socialist society, as the Soviet Union and adjacent countries were called? It was the free Western society. There was the society that you think of, that at least over there, a person is valued as a person and not just a little screw in the huge machine, as a little detail for the good of the everybody. At least then, in the West, they will give you opportunities to earn, to build your business, to develop on. There's justice. The law works there. And you know, over, let's say, several years recently, or maybe even several recent months, it seems that this idea is especially cracking on the scenes, because it seems that exactly where those principles were especially deep and strong, they're gone. Where are those ideas for which an entire country, let's say the United States of America, could call its people, for the sake of the ideal of the Western free society, would go and fight for others, liberate other nations who were under oppression? Where are they? They're not there. They're only cynics, both in the West and in the East. And it seems that you're not going to even find anything that would say, ooh, we could hold on to that. You can say, okay, there's church, but that is why church is backing away. That's why temples, let's say in Western Europe and in America and here, often become clubs, or what it used to be in the Soviet Union, because it seems that when you look at churches, there's nothing left there. It's not, at least what people see from the outside. Let's take that church and cancel it the way it was. Let's cancel the structure, the pastors, the buildings, the preachers, the youth ministers, the worship leaders. Let's just get together at home, 5 to 10, 15 people, organic church. Let's again renew that. And we already been there too. That's a great idea to meet in small groups, to be closer, to be natural. But now it seems that the entire world is becoming, like our tour guide says, more and more meaningless. There was a time when I was younger, at the church where I grew up. It was a small Baptist church. There was one thing I enjoyed doing. It was study of the word. That's what we call it. It wasn't when as it was for me for a teenager, it was especially pleasant when you sit down and a 60-year-old man, like I am standing in front of you, and he's giving this philosophical idea. But for me, for a youngster, I wanted something that I could participate in. And the study of the word was a time when I was able to speak up. So everybody, as we read part of the Bible, everybody present could say, this is what I think, and it also means this and this. So it was, it wasn't just methodology of the teacher or the preacher to give a whole topic and unveil it in front of the listeners. It was the other way. Let's everybody think and everybody give input. So what is happening in the world now when the old ideas are falling apart and people say, no, it doesn't work. All of the politicians that we had, look how wonderful they are, but indeed they don't know how to do stuff. So let's take a non-politician, somebody who is as far as possible from the politic, and let's make him a president. And they do that in one country and in another country, in the third country. So they take the society, politics apart, business apart. And you know what? Ecclesiastes does exactly the same thing. The Ecclesiastes says, I am in the business of studying wisdom and knowledge, and when I started delving into that, in the end, I arrived at the place that they give no meaning to life. And then he takes another topic. We're not going to talk about this today, but it's the topic about pleasure and enjoyment, and he goes into that, and he says, not even that works. Not the idea, not living for yourself, that doesn't work. And he explains why. We're not going to touch upon other topics right now. We're going to just come back to this one. What are the arguments that Ecclesiastes brings? Why he says it doesn't work and how he explains it. And first of all, and we're now going from the topic from importance of wisdom that we spoke a lot about into the topic of vagueness and vapor nature of wisdom. So Ecclesiastes here says directly and honestly, he says, on the one hand, being wise is better than being foolish. Well, maybe he said a stronger word in there, but we understand what he means. But he also says directly and honestly, although that is true, in the end, a person sees in the light of wisdom a lot of reason for sorrow, for sadness, for suffering. It's one reason, and the other reason that he says here, we read in verse 15, no matter how much we study or learn anything, what is twisted cannot be straightened. What is lacking cannot be counted. That's 115. And it is here where the discrepancy emerges between the person who lives without God one way, or as he says, the way we read from the very beginning, the man after the sun. In this book, this phrase of under the sun is repeated, I don't know, 30 times, about 30 times. So the idea here is that it's a closed system where, in the understanding of the ancient people, the life of man was a closed, there's a dome that you cannot pass, and above the dome there's God and angels and everybody, all the other people. So if we just live in our closed system under the dome, if we don't look up to God, then as Ecclesiastes says, the result of knowledge and wisdom bring us to, first of all, that we see that we still aren't going to achieve what we know. The crooked remains crooked. It cannot be straightened, as he says. And secondly, he says that finally we will see a lot of things that we wish we didn't know. We wish we didn't see. Had we not known this, it would be much easier for us to live. So in that way, maybe it is easier to be foolish. And it's the same when you come to vocational school or technicum or university, and very often the student has to make a choice. He wants more sorrow or more pleasure. I'm making this very simple, but there are two types of students at the university. When the ones who study more and they find out how complex life is, and there are people who live at the expense of the others, and then they find that life can be more joyous than for those first group. So Ecclesiastes talks more about the corrupt nature of the world. We read that in verse 15. And that is what our world is experiencing today with a special acuteness, that we see that around us, no matter how much we try, it is going to be all spoiled, it's corrupt. And now I'm reading probably one of the key books for me that I would love to have read 10 to 15 years earlier. This is Capitalism Progress. That's what it's called, titled. It was written about 50 years ago. It was written by a Dutch person, Bob God's Word. And then it was republished once, and it's out of print now. And I just found it in the library, and it really helped me figure out what happened to the mankind and how mankind developed over the last 200, 300 years. So 300 years is the term when in the world the experiment started, which repeats the experiment that this Ecclesiastes was doing. This experiment is called, and it is still titled, The Experiment of the Renaissance Epoch. So this is the emergence of knowledge. When a person believes that the more he learns, the more that knowledge is going to help him develop further and to finally become a perfect man. So Bob God's Word says, it all began with people asking themselves a question: what if my human condition as a good man, as a person who is moral, or as they said, a person of virtue, a person who takes care of others and not just of himself, who can build the type of relationship with other people that are meaningful for him and for the people around him. What if all of this doesn't come from the Bible, not from the church, but what if just comes from knowledge that we gain? So the main thing that changed, that went upside down at the time of this age that we call the knowledge era, is the faith that without a man, without God, without his word, without his impact, by means of gaining knowledge, can become better. For those people who lived in the Soviet Union, we vividly remember this. It was one of the key aspects, key postulates of the scientific communism. Yeah, we still have socialism. Yes, we have lots of shortcomings for the socialism, but we're going there. The more progress, the better a man becomes. The knowledge changes a person. And it is today when we have arrived at a point where mankind looks around and says, no, this experiment with knowledge era concluded with nothing. It failed. The progress, indeed, is non-existent. The progress in the meaning that would mean that a person should become better, and therefore life becomes more meaningful. While a man looks around now and says, everything we said during this type of knowledge is meaningless. As the atheists say now, the scientists, atheists, they say, we just don't have those type of tools. The tools for getting to know, the knowledge tools that would help us change the society, change the mankind for the better. There's not amount of people with a PhD degree or, any scientific academic degree is not going to able to help rid all the other people of all the vices and that we all have and make families better and make society less corrupt. Then why do we go to school? Why do we study at universities? That is the question that on one hand says, let's deconstruct what has occurred over the recent 300 years of this experiment, where we look back and we say, we live during the time when there's no truth. It's post-truth. There's no Christianity. We live in post-Christian era. That's what people say. It's not what we used to know before. And when we live during the time of post-knowledge, there are no principle of international relations that used to stand. Everything falls apart. It's deconstructed. It's seeping through our fingers. So where is our guide taking us? Where is he bringing us to when he says that the crooked that was crooked is not going to be changed. The crooked man cannot be strengthened with any progress, which is not existent. You're not going to correct finally so that it could indeed be the way you dream. You cannot correct a society. You strive for it, but generation after generation comes and they start again and again, as he says in the first 11 verses here, when he shows how the wind blows and comes back, how the water circles in the world, and that the sun goes up and goes down. And sun, air, and water. And it has continuation that this is not our friends. This is something that shows the vanity of this moment. And the more we go forward, the more it all becomes dangerous for us. As we see now when we look at the news, both the sun and the air and the water, we don't have to go anywhere too far. Look at the news 2 weeks ago. You will be able to see, even in our country or in our neighboring countries. So, how is the experiment of our guide or our preacher here is different from this recent experiment? There are several moments that will help us understand what happens when we listen with the ears that live of the people who lived at that time. But first of all, there is the verse 16 in chapter 1 that is confusing. The Ecclesiastes writes, I thought to myself, look, I have grown and increased in wisdom more than anyone who has ruled over Jerusalem before me. I have experienced much of wisdom and knowledge. And we read this and we say, he's also arrogant. Of course, he's not going to achieve much. He knows too much. Since he's a king, then everything should bow to him. He knows everything, he thinks. People at the time heard and read these words differently. This is what they understood. They understood that if there is any tool to help knowledge, if there's any teacher who could teach my son better and prepare him to life better, then it's not a school number 573 at the end of the earth. This is better some lyceum, the most experienced teacher who graduated possibly from Western universities and studied here. So this is what it says here. Ecclesiastes says the same. I have had this opportunity. I had all these tools. All of the best libraries have been available to me. The best brains were close to me. And I can tell you that having had absolutely everything, the best Harvard with Cambridge and Oxford, having gone through all of that, here's what I have learned. I applied myself to the understanding of wisdom and also madness and folly, but I learned that this, too, is chasing after the wind.
Это погоня за ветром. И потом он поясняет, потому что
And then he explains, for with much wisdom comes much sorrow. And there are several images here that can help us to find our way through. This chasing after the wind, yeah, you understand that this is the spirit, the wind that blows everywhere, but it doesn't mean necessarily anything spiritual. But what it talks about is it's chasing. You want to get something, and you. This is the image that they're trying to paint. Is that imagine a Bedouin where he has a big net or hammock, and he finds a shady tree and a nice place to hang his hammock, and he lays in this hammock in order to rest in the shade. He lies down, okay, anticipating rest from all his sorrows for at least 30 minutes, and then he will continue working. And then he feels, that's not working. It's too hot. So that's not restful at all. And then he keeps looking, and there is a branch. Ooh, okay, so branch is moving, so there's the wind. So Ecclesiastes is drawing this funny picture and for everybody to laugh at it. So the Bedouin runs up, he jumps up, runs with his net to the place where the wind is shaking the branch, and he grabs that and he hangs his hammock and he lies down there, and it's not working again. So that's a humorous image that he says that indeed gaining knowledge is that you seem to have caught it, but then it escapes you. And the same for people who were studying, who were working during the epoch of our knowledge, and he said that the best answer to the problem of yesterday is today, until it changes with tomorrow, because tomorrow comes a better resolution. And they thought that every day is going to bring something better, something new. And Ecclesiastes says, not at all. Much more sorrow instead. And then we say, okay, what's the way out? What's the meaning of this? And there is a way out. You know, there is this way out that goes beyond the frame of what is conducted in this experiment. If we look carefully now, looking into the tool that was being used, he's using the tool of his brain, his mind. And at one moment, when he talks about the fact that that didn't work, he shows that he is testing this brain with another tool, and this other tool is unexpectedly sounds to us in verse 18. For with much wisdom comes, now he's not talking about intellect anymore, not about knowledge, getting to know, but he comes about emotion. He says, because with much wisdom comes much sorrow. And the more knowledge, the more grief. And you know, in those words, instead of seeing a reproach for the people who are striving for knowledge and striving for wisdom, and they want to learn, you're still chasing after the wind, you're going to find more sorrow, and nevertheless. Here, for us, there is a hint, a guidance. This guide, he's not like other guides. You know, very interesting here that when you find yourself in the hands of some experienced guide, you don't just understand him with your mind, but you feel it with all of your being and with all of your mind. I'm remembering Brian Whitman, who preached here many times, and people know him also from being a guide in Israel. And by the way, next year, he's coming into Israel, and he says next year there's going to be a better opportunity. So whenever you are with him on the bus, whenever you travel, or you come to a place, to a location, you look at something, you find yourself in a special atmosphere. He makes this, surrounds you with his heart that is filled with understanding. that God is doing something with his people here and something that he wants to do something with us present there. And whenever we are in the hands of this tour guide, we see him as an emotional person, and these emotions that are hard for us. It's the same when you come to Babi Yar. They started installing new monuments there. I was passing by, I didn't have much time, but if you look, but even what I saw, the little that I saw, it was very emotional indeed. When you don't just know with your brain, but you perceive with your senses, you're feeling what was occurring here when thousands and 10,000s of people were murdered here. There's a difference between a man who comes and is going to tell you of what happened in Babi Yar simply because he read it in his book, and the person who experienced it, even though he was just a young boy. There's a difference between the one who brings you to Maidan Nezalezhnosti is going to tell you about the events from 18 to the 22nd of February 2014, and the person who was actually there, a person who experienced it, who is going to tell us about sorrow and sadness, and he gives us a hint. When we look at what he's telling us, we can now go beyond the boundaries of what's going on under the sun, to go beyond over there where there is Elohim. In this book, this word Elohim, which means God, is repeated, not the God Jehovah or Yahweh, which means my Lord, but it is the word that talks about God sovereign, God unknowable for us, who knows what he has done, but that word is repeated about 30 times, as many as under the sun. So you can imagine that there is something happening, like there are two grounds, the background and the foreground. One is above the sun and the other one is under the sun. And in order to understand how the stuff that is happening under the sun could happen, could change, we need to look at the other scenery. And we only have time to briefly read this verse in chapter 3, 3:11a. Ecclesiastes 3:11. He has made everything, Elohim, he has made everything beautiful in its time. He also set eternity and peace in hearts of men. And this peace is not just our world, it's cosmos, it's universe, everything God created, and he put everything that exists, he put in the hearts of men. We cannot comprehend it completely from the beginning to the end. We humble ourselves before him and we understand, we realize that inside of us there is something when we look at this surrounding world of post-truth and post-everything, so much sorrow and impossibility to restore relationship with our closest people, much less in the entire country. And we still have hope. We have the hope that God gives to us because he has set in our hearts his eternity, his world. I remember yesterday my wife, Irina, reminded me the story that occurred a long time ago. When somebody gave us a puppy, actually a dog that had a puppy a day later, and it had many puppies a day later, and we had to take care of them, and when they grew up they became beautiful little pups, and I never talked about it, but it seems to me that because Irina was feeding them and she looked at them every day, and she reminded me, when they grew up a little bit, she took them outside to go outside. They don't go do their stuff all immediately, but then their look still back at her. And the minute that she turns around and walks away, they stop everything and they follow her. This is
attachment. What our children do to us with mom and dad, this is what God input into our hearts in the way that we don't understand, but we can feel it. And if we don't feel it, we can at least hear the echo of this. We at least have this memory somewhere. It is deep engraved in us what Augustus says, you created us for yourself, and our heart has no peace until we find peace in you. So the more we look at this world under the sun where there's no God, the more we hear this dissonance. And if we're capable of hearing of what God tells us, that gives us a way out to the place where we can bring world back into this world. And one day, the God who gave this eternity, this cosmos, this everything into our hearts, He came here. He found that way. He made that through that path towards where we are under the sun in order to come to us and to say the same thing Ecclesiastes said a long time before, but to do it in a very clear and understandable way. Ecclesiastes says, vanity, everything is vanity. Meaningless, utterly meaningless, everything is meaningless. What does a man profit from all of his labors? We imagine 6 years at university, writing dissertations. What use is it, Ecclesiastes says, under the sun? And the one who came here to our world under the sun, he says, what sense if a man gains the entire world, but loses his soul, or what ransom can he give for his soul? And then we think, yeah, well, indeed, what do we do now? Because I already damaged my soul. I lost my soul. How do I fix it? And what happens here is that decomposition, destruction that is necessary for us to put our soul back together again. Because we have to remember that the one who came to our earth, the one who set aside all his glory, who's put aside all his shyness, and he came here as a man. As the scientists would say, as a deconstructed person. He put himself into parts. He is the Son of Man and the Son of God. We have no idea how that is possible, but that is how he reconstructed himself. And we see him that he's a Son of Man. He's the teacher who teaches us. And on the other hand, we see together with Paul and with John and with others who revealed that he's the Logos that helps us reconstruct that which is not clear to us and that brings us to sorrow and disillusionment. Logos is the very word that we have, logic, the Greek word that means knowledge, getting to know, wisdom. He brought to us that which could be reconstructed, but first we need to deconstruct. He became this understanding of the word, but it's not the telos, but the logos that came here on the earth. And he didn't just stop there. Then he was deconstructing himself more. He humbled himself, became a servant, the one who washed his disciples' feet, the one who went to the cross for our sake, and who finally, where several minutes from now, the brothers are going to open this plate here. It is deconstructed as the symbolic bread that we see. The bread that was one, and he says, I'm the bread of life. And then we see it deconstructed so that we could take a piece, so that we could be the ecclesia, the meeting, the body for which he started sending his guides a long time ago, who would guide us to the path where we see only sorrow and only disillusionment in our family, in our relationships, in our country, in our world. And he said, I came to become deconstructed for you, so that you would be reconstructed, so that you would be whole again. And if you feel sorrow in your heart, if you feel that everything you learned before brings you to disillusionment and sorrow, that you cannot reconstruct even the closest things, your closest friend, your spouse, and you are in so much sadness, then remember of the one who said, I am here for you.
I came here
один человек,
once,
о котором написано
one
в другой
man,
книге мудрости.
written about another book of wisdom, also in the heart of our big, thick Bible,
Человек, ему имя
a
Иов,
man
Иов его еще называют.
named Job.
Он был разобран до такой
He
степени,
was
что
so
когда мы так
deconstructed,
графически там все
then
изображено,
when we so
нам кажется, что
graphically
уже
read
дальше
about it,
трудно себе что-то
we
представить.
see and we think
Эта
it's
разобранность,
hard to imagine
она настолько,
anything
что это не
farther
просто,
than
когда вы
this.
видите по
This
телевизору, например,
deconstruction
какие-то
is
сцены,
so
где слишком
deep that
много
not just you
графики,
see
скорби,
graphic
где есть
scenes
скорбь,
on
болезнь,
the
смерти,
TV screen where
закрываем
there's
глаза своих детей,
sorrow
мы
and
отворачиваемся
sickness
сами.
and
Но здесь
violence, and we
картина, она
close our
явственно
children's eyes, we turn away our eyes,
всё это
but in this picture
разобранность,
so well portrayed in
всё
front of us, and we
рассыпалась
see his deconstruction and his falling apart, the family's falling apart, society, his condition, his business, his body,
Все, что самое было близкое.
and then everything that
И
was
он
the
теперь
closest to him.
вопит,
And
вопит
now
к Богу и говорит:
he is crying out to God, and he says, "What have you done to me? This is
здесь есть
unfair."
интересный момент.
And I'm going to stop here for a moment
Человека,
to
известного
remember
психолога, который
a
пережил
man, a well-known psychologist who has experienced the horrors
Свенцема,
of
и он написал в
Auschwitz,
своей книге о смысле
and he
человека.
wrote in his book about the
Viktor
meaning
Frankl
of a man. Viktor
говорит о том, что
Frankl is his name.
там,
He says,
где люди полностью
there,
разобраны,
where
где их
people are
разбирают
completely
вот в этом
deconstructed,
лагере,
where they are being taken apart in
там
this camp,
оказывается, что некоторые люди
there it turns out that some
не
people
имеют на самом деле в себе того
indeed
основания
do not have
человечности,
that
которое дает
core
вам силу
of
оставаться людьми.
humanity in themselves that allows them to stay
Поэтому они
human.
крадут у других,
Therefore, they steal from others
которым еще бывает тяжелее, чем им.
that
Они
are
предают
in worse condition
своих
than they
ради
are.
других.
They betray their
Они
own for
сходят
the
с
sake
ума.
of others.
Там,
They
в
run mad.
Освенциме,
In
остается
Auschwitz, what
один только
remains
вопрос, который дает
is only one
силы для того,
question
чтобы
that
выдержать
gives
и
strength
остаться
to
цельным. Это вопрос.
withstand and become and stay whole. And the
Почему?
question is,
Вопрос,
Why?
каким образом отвечает
question,
человек на этот вопрос, почему я живу?
how the man will answer that question, why do I live? Why live? That's where we started this trip today. So if man has an answer to that question, he remains human.
Если нет, то там у тебя
And
не
if he
остается
doesn't,
ничего.
then
Когда
nothing
Иов приходит
remains.
к Богу и говорит
And
ему:
when Job comes to God and tells him,
зачем? Почему?
why?
Бог
What
его не
for?
отправляет на какой-то
God doesn't send him away to some lengthy seminar, and after you have listened to everything, all of the diagrams and all of the graphic, come back and I will tell you. No.
Он ему говорит:
He tells him,
ты где был,
where
когда
were
я
you when
создал
I
этот мир?
created the world?
Тот самый мир,
The
который
very
ты
world
видишь,
that you
ты здесь
see, you
сидишь,
sitting here
разобранный, ты видишь
deconstructed,
восход,
you still see the
солнце,
sun up and
перелив.
sun down. You
Этот
see this
мир,
world
который
that
однажды,
once,
когда только
when I
его
created
создали,
it,
уже был
I was
только
already
первым
there at the
восходе, первым
first sun
заходе.
up and sun down.
Для тебя я
For
самое
you, the
главное.
main thing here
Тебе самое главное
is myself.
я.
When you
Если
answer
ты
the
ответишь на
question
вопрос,
why,
почему,
because
это
in
потому,
a
что
way
есть
that
я с
because
тобой,
I am
тогда
with
всё
you,
станет
then
на свои
everything
места.
else will be at the proper place.
Иисус
Jesus
пришел для нас, для
came
того, чтобы
to
остаться
stay
с
with
нами.
us, to
Для того, чтобы
abide, so
каждый из
that
нас,
each one of us
придя
coming
сюда,
here
мог
could not
прийти
just come
не
because
просто
we
для
do
того,
this on
чтобы,
Sunday,
как мы делаем
not
в
because
воскресенье,
just simply
не просто
it's a
потому,
nice
что
place to be,
нам хорошо здесь бывает.
because all good
Потому что
Christians
так
do
делают все
this.
хорошие христиане.
But if we answer this
Если мы
question as to
отвечаем на
why
этот
we come
вопрос, почему
here,
мы сюда
as
пришли,
in
это потому
because
что
it is good
нам
for
хорошо
us to
быть
be
с
with
нашим
our
Господом
Lord as
вместе,
one body, and that
единым телом.
brings
Это
meaning
дает
to our
смысл нашему
existence,
существованию,
and the
дает
answer
ответ
to
на
all
наши
of the other questions, for all of the other sorrows and disillusionments that we have, then indeed we are the spring of hope. We can come where God has sent us in order to invite people, but not to ourselves, but to Him, to where He is, who remained deconstructed for us sakes, in order for us to have eternal life. Because He set eternity into our hearts. Because He gave us this attachment to Himself. Because He reminds us that His face that looks upon us from the cross, He doesn't just remind us about the past, but He offers us to be our future. Because this very face is what gives us strength, gives possibilities to go through all the sorrows of this world. So let's thank him for that. Let's stand up and pray. Lord, we are grateful to you that you came for us on this earth so that our annual day of knowledge would be the best reminder about the knowledge that you revealed to us, that you sacrificed to us more than we can reveal here under the sun. You revealed yourself, the creator to us, the creator of cosmos, who created everything here in this world so that finally, to live in our hearts, you loved us. We thank you that you gave us these amazing emotions, the highest of which is the one that you lead us through the disillusionment and sorrow and anxiety. This is emotion of love that you call us, each one of us, into, where you call the entire world into, and you said in your word, one day will be revealed for all humankind. May you be glorified, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Дякую, Сергій Борисович.
Thank you, Sergey.
Зараз ми будемо приймати хліб і
We're
вино.
going to have the communion now.
І я хотів би попросити, зазвичай я запрошую, щоб люди підходили сюди.
I usually
брали хліб і
ask for
вино.
people
Я хотів би,
to
щоб
be
ми
invited
зараз
here,
разом прийняли хліб.
and take your piece. But what I
Символічно
want
для нас
is
всіх,
for
що
us
єдине
to
тіло
take
у
the piece
Христі.
and take the cup, but then stand on
Може
your
мені
places,
пару братів допомогти
and
підійти, рознести
we're
базарний
going
хліб.
to ask brothers to come and carry things around the room.
Можете розносити, ми потім помолимося.
You can go ahead and carry it around, and we will pray eventually.
В різних церквах по-різному, напевно,
In different churches,
відбувається.
this is done
Я
differently, I
думаю,
suppose.
що суть
And
не в цьому,
the
як це
essence is
відбувається.
not in
Я
how.
часто дуже
I
переживаю,
often worry,
зосереджений на тому, як це все
and
виглядає.
I'm focused on
Ми
how
намагаємося
this is going to
прикрасти,
be.
зрозуміло,
We
як
try, of
накрити
course, to
стіл, там,
make it
з
look
картиною
pretty
красивою.
with a pretty
Православних
tablecloth,
церквах це
and
ще
in
більш
some
красиво
other churches, let's say
виглядає,
Orthodox
золото
churches,
і так
that
далі.
looks beautiful
Але
with gold
за
and
оцим
everything.
всім,
But beyond all
як
this,
зробити,
of
як правильно стати, як
how
правильно
to stand
прийняти,
correct, how to
можливо,
take
десь
correctly,
втрачається,
we perhaps are losing
ну, а суть цього.
the
Чому ми взагалі
essence.
це робимо?
Why do we do all of
І часто,
this?
можливо,
And quite often, though,
церкві,
in church,
де
perhaps
можливо, проповіді,
there are
прославління,
sermons and
якось
worship time,
форма, як це
and the
все
form
зробити.
of how this is done.
Десь втрачається, а що, заради чого ми це
What we
робимо? Да,
lose
ми
is
нібито
the
всі
why. Why do
пам'ятаємо,
we do
але
this? We
десь
sort of
це
remember
здається,
all of
можливо,
this,
для нас таким
but it
банальним, зрозумілим.
becomes
Ну, да, Христос помер,
mundane
да,
and
Він воскрес. Але
so
це
clearly
взагалі
understood.
суть,
Oh yeah, Jesus
чого ми тут
died and
служимо,
rose
чому
from
ми
the
з вами
dead. But
поклоняємось,
the
чому ми
essence as to
слухаємо
why we
проповіді,
stand here, why do we
чому ми
worship, why do we
збираємось
listen
тут
to
всі
the
разом.
word, why do we gather
І
together?
суть нібито дуже
And the
проста.
essence seems to be very
Апостол
simple.
Павло,
Apostle Paul,
коли писав
when he
Коринтянам
wrote to the Corinthians
своє послання,
his
то
letter,
Євангелію він звіщав. І
he
це
was sharing the
проста річ.
good news.
Звіщаєш вам, браті,
You know,
Євангелію, яку я
I'm
вам
telling you the
благовістив,
good news that I
яку
already
прийняли
shared with you,
ви,
which you
в
have
якій
accepted
стоїте,
and in which you
якою
stand, by
спасаєтесь,
which you
коли
are saved, when
пам'ятаєте,
you
яким
remember
словом я
with what
благовістив вам,
word
якщо
I
тільки
brought you the
вірували
good
не
news.
на
If you
осліп.
did not
Бо я передав вам найперше,
blindly
що
believe,
прийняв,
because
що Христос був, помер
I took from
ради наших гріхів,
Christ what I
за
passed on to
Писанням, що
you,
він
that
був
he
похований, і що третього дня він
died according to the
воскрес за Писанням.
scriptures, and that he was buried,
Слова
and
дуже
he
прості,
rose
дуже
from the
коротко
dead
це
according to the
звучить,
scriptures
але
on
це
the third day.
змінює
So those are simple
все
words,
насправді.
but indeed that
Це змінює
changes
наше
everything.
життя,
That
це
changes
змінює
our
наше
life,
майбутнє.
changes our
Якби
future.
Христос цього не
Had
зробив,
Christ
якби він
not
не
done
помер,
that, had he
якби
not
він не був похований, якби він не
died, been
воскрес,
buried,
то
and
все
rose
було
from the
даремно,
dead,
і
it
Срібрюсов
would
сьогодні
all be in
говорив,
vain.
це було
And
абсолютно
as
суєє.
Sergey said
Але
today,
Ісус
this
дає
would
нам
be vanity of vanities, but
можливість
Jesus
жити
gives
далі,
us opportunity
жити
to live on,
в Його царстві, мати надію, щоб наше
live
життя
in
з
the
вами не
kingdom.
було порожнім і пустим. Давайте піднімемось. У всіх є хліб?
Has everyone been served?
Бо прийняв я від Господа, що я вам передав, що Господь Ісус
I received from
ночі
the Lord which I
тієї,
pass on to
як
you.
виданий
On
був,
the night when
взяв
he was
хліб,
betrayed,
подяку
Jesus,
віддав,
Lord,
переломив
took the
і
bread,
сказав,
gave thanks, and
прийміть,
he broke it,
споживайте,
and he
це
said,
тіло моє,
take
що за
this
вас ламається.
and eat
Це
it.
робіть
This
на
is in
спомин про
remembrance of
мене.
me. Do this whenever you
Господь,
eat
дорогий,
in
ми
remembrance of me.
дякуємо Тобі
Dear
за
Lord,
Твій
we
подвиг,
thank you
дякуємо
for
Боже Тобі
your
за твою смерть, за твій
heroic
прихід і твою
death
смерть, Господь,
for
заради
your
нас.
coming and for your
Господь
dying
сьогодні
for our
говорив, що
sake.
ти можеш
It was
бути,
said today that
як нам
you,
здається,
as we
жорстоким
seem, can
царем,
be a
жорстоким
cruel
Богом,
king, a cruel
який не
God
любить,
who
не проявляє
doesn't
милості, Господь.
show mercy,
Але
who doesn't
в
like
смерті Ісуса
mercy.
Христа ми бачимо
In
зовсім
the
інше. Ми
life of
бачимо,
Jesus Christ, we
що
see a
ти
completely
Бог,
different
який
picture. We see that
віддаєш
you
саме
are
цінне, що
God
в тебе
who
є,
gives the
заради
most
нас.
precious thing you have for our sake.
Не найкращих,
We are
не
not the nicest. We're
найпрекрасніших,
not the
не
most beautiful
найдобріших,
or
Господь, в
kindest
цьому
people in
світі.
this world.
Всі ми маємо
We
свої
all
недоліки,
have
свої
our
гріхи,
shortcomings
Господь.
and
І
sins,
ніхто з нас не шукав
and none of
тебе.
us
Але
were
ти,
searching
Господь,
for you. But
проявив до
you,
нас
Lord,
увагу, ти
showed
проявив,
your
Господь, до нас
attention to
терпіння, ти,
us,
Господь,
your
проявив до нас
patience, you
любов.
showed your love,
І ми можемо,
and we
хочемо тобі бути
want to
вдячні.
be
Дякуємо
grateful to you.
тобі за твою
Thank you for your
смерть.
death.
Так само і чашу взяв він по
In
вечері і
the same
сказав,
way,
ця
he took
чаша
the
новий
cup
заповіт у моїх
after the
крові.
meal.
Це робіть, коли
And he
тільки
said,
будете
this
пити на
cup
спомин про
is the
мене.
covenant of my
Кожного
blood.
разу,
Do
як
this in
будете
remembrance
їсти
of
цей
me.
хліб
For every
та
time when
чашу
you
цю
eat this
пити,
bread and
смерть
drink
Господню
from this blood,
звіщайте,
you
аж
are
доки він прийде.
proclaiming the death of Christ until the time he comes back.
Господь, дякуємо тобі за
Lord,
кров, яка
we thank you for
пролилась
the blood
на
that was
хресті,
shed on the
Господь.
cross.
І це дивно,
And it's
що кров
amazing
може
that
вмивати
blood
гріхи.
can wash away
Нам
sins.
здається, що кров
It
може
seems
лише
that blood can
забруднювати
only
щось.
stain
Але
something, but
твоя кров, вона
your
свята.
blood is
Вона
holy.
безцінна,
It is
Господь, і тому вона
priceless, Lord.
змогла
That's why it
очистити
was
наші
able to
гріхи.
purify
Дай,
our
Господь,
sins.
нам
So give
віри,
us
що
faith to believe
цього
that this is
достатньо, Господь.
enough.
Твоєї крові
Your
достатньо для того,
blood
щоб
is
ми
enough
були
for us to
очищені, щоб ми,
be
Господь, були
purified,
примирені, щоб ми були прийняті
be
тобою в твоєму царстві.
reconciled
Якщо,
with
Господь,
you and
колись
accepted
ми
in your kingdom.
сумніваємося, чи
If we are ever
достойні ми
doubting
бути
whether we
з
are
тобою,
worthy of
то
being
дай
with
нам,
you,
Господь,
so give us
згадувати твою
remembering
обіцянку
of
і
your
твою
promise
справу.
and
Ти,
your
Господь, це
deeds.
зробив,
Lord,
цього
you did it.
достатньо. Ми
This is
приймаємо,
enough.
Господь, твою
This is
жертву
sufficient. We
за наші
accept
гріхи.
your sacrifice for
Дякую тобі,
our
Боже.
sins, Lord. Thank you.
Нікого ми не пропустили.
Has everyone been served?
Далі у нас
What we're going to have further
час,
on
коли ми можемо
is a time
Бога прославити,
when
бути
we
йому
can
вдячними за
glorify
його
God and be
піклування про
grateful
нас
for His care for us,
і віддати частину того, чим
and
Бог
to
благословляє
give
нас.
back a share
За
of
збір
what
пожертвувань.
God
Можете передавати
blesses us
сумочки.
with. So this is a time of tithes and offering. You can pass around the
Молитися
bags,
зараз,
and we're also going to
або
pray.
можете підготувати
So you whether
потребу, за
can
яку хочете, щоб ми
write your
помолилися,
prayer
або
request
є,
or your
можливо, якісь
gratitude, or
свідчення.
perhaps you have testimony. You can come out here.
У нас буде також оголошення.
And we're also going to have announcements.
Приветствую всех. Просим помолиться за то, чтобы пупочек
Hello to everybody. I would like to ask for healing for the navel of our granddaughter. She's still little, but just for it to heal well.
Ще?
Anybody else?
Є ще у нас Наташа Руденко. Благодарен за то, что операция у Андрея прошла успешно и нуждалась в восстановлении после операции.
Natasha Rudenko says, grateful for the good outcome of the surgery of my brother Andre. So please pray for the restoration after the surgery.
Давайте тоді піднімемось.
Okay, and also pray for Salomia.
Господь, потреб сьогодні
Lord,
нібито небагато, але
we have few prayer requests now, but
можливо, це якісь дрібні
you know
речі,
our
за які
inner
не беремо.
desires. Maybe we think that they are not important, and so we do not put them forth as prayer requests. But you know the need of our heart, the need and the issues connected to studies which have started for students. Please provide
Дай Господь триматись тебе і
for all the needs, and let us hold on you, because it is difficult to rely on anything in this world. Help us rely on you and keep us, Lord. We ask for Salomia, for her healing, for her navel to be healed. We ask for her parents. We ask for Andrei. Thank you that his operation was good, and give him further healing. And we ask for Ukraine, for those who are on high positions and who has a lot of responsibilities. Please give them wisdom, for them to seek you, for them to try to understand how to help Ukraine develop correctly, and help each of us at all our places not to think that we are not responsible for anything, because everybody of us has his and her job, and help us be better for your glory, and give us wisdom, and help us be good parents, husbands, wives, and kids and children. Bless our finances. Thank you that we can have ministry to church, serve to church. Please allow us to correctly dispose of these finances. Amen.
Зараз оголошення.
Announcement. Please be seated. I greet you all, our church.
Привіт.
Hello.
Ви повернулися.
You have come back.
12
On the 12th of September, we have planned a membership meeting. On the 12th of September, and we try to do it at least once a quarter. Now there have been less often, but we waited for everybody to come back to Kyiv. We will declare in Facebook what will be the agenda. And now I want to remind you a little bit about membership in the church and why it is needed. For me, it goes without saying, and it seems to me that I have been speaking about that for a long time, but it turns out that somebody has forgotten, somebody does not understand. In Bible, there is no term church member, and people have chosen it in order for us to understand better what we are doing. But the idea is to be a community, to be a family, to help one another. And this idea is in Bible, and we realize it in a format of membership. Who can be a member of Spring of Hope Church? There are 4 very simple things for that. First, you have to be baptized according to your faith. We believe that Christians have to do witness their have to provide testimony of their faith by baptism, and we believe that people who are born from above, from high, can be allowed to be baptized. And a person has to read our symbol of faith. We have it printed, and you can take it. It is and share our principles of faith. It does not mean that we should look at the world in the same way and have the same theological principles, but the main principles which unite us all as Christians must be the same. And the third thing is that you should inform, notify that you have to, if you want to be a member of the church. We have a formal paper. Somebody said paper to be filled in is too formalized, but if you do not want it, you should just inform us orally that you want to be a member of the church. Then a person enters our family, and we are responsible for that person more than we are responsible for those who are not members of the church. For example, I have neighbors, I communicate with them, I can help them, but I also have my family, and the level of responsibility and care for my family is much more than for my neighbor, than my care for my neighbor. Therefore, we care more about members of the church, and we're responsible more for one another, and we start to take care not only of ourselves but of members of the church. That it is a higher level of responsibility. For example, when we have the membership meeting on the 12th of September, we want members of church to come there because we want to decide to resolve some family things there, internal things. On the membership meeting, we will present everybody who has decided to become a member of the church. If now you have been given it a lot of thought and want to become a member of the church of Spring of Hope, it is a very great opportunity, and you can take it to be presented in our meeting of membership. And but we love everybody else, and next week after our meeting, we ask you to gather on the second floor, and we will try to make it comfortable for you and convenient for you, and we will talk about thoughts important for every church, and each of you will have to ask any question: how we spend money, where are we heading, who is the management, how many conferences we will have, whether we will do another camp in winter. So I emphasize, if any of you want to become a member of our church, tell it to me at least. Second, on the 12th of September, plan your time to be present, and we will discuss the things important for the church. And if you have any questions, you can come up to me after the meeting, even today, and I will answer. And Now let us stand up and continue to glorify our Lord.
Час мов ріка,
Тече невпинно. Сонячний день, раптова злива, не лякає, бо віримо. Ти не залишиш нас, ти нас не розчаруєш. Ти вірний нам завжди, завжди допоможеш. В тому і біль візьмеш на себе, наш Ісусе, ти пан панів. Милість твоя вища за небо, і тобі ми співаємо. Ти не залишиш нас, ти нас не розчаруєш. Ти вірний нам завжди, завжди допоможеш. Часом важко твою путь збагнути, але знаємо, Господь наш любий Бог, що ти не залишиш нас, ти нас не розчаруєш. Ти вірний нам завжди, завжди допоможеш. Ти не залишиш нас, ти нас не розчаруєш. Ти вірний нам завжди, завжди допоможеш.
Зараз, поки у нас збирається наш новий склад групи прославління, я хочу попросити
Oh,
нас
well,
дорослих бути
when
більш дійсними
you,
останній
a
час.
team of glorification comes onto the stage, I ask our adults to become more like children for a while.
Довго в пошуках був я, те, що поруч було, не помічав, але мить не забуду, як раптово знайшов мене ти сам. Я не збагну ніяк те, що любов твоя може життя змінити так. Коли пізнав тебе, я зрозумів одне, ти все, чого так бажаю я. Мені потрібна одна любов твоя, і все, чого прагну я. Любов твоя, любов твоя. Ісус мені завжди, обираю шлях інший. Найцінніший для мене тільки ти. Я не збагну ніяк те, що любов твоя може життя змінити так. Коли пізнав тебе, я зрозумів одне, ти все, чого так бажаю я. Мені потрібна одна любов твоя, любов твоя, і все, чого прагну я. Любов твоя, любов твоя. На-на-на-на-на. На-на-на-на. Мені потрібна одна любов твоя, любов твоя, і все, чого прагну я. Любов твоя, любов твоя, мені потрібна одна. Любов твоя, любов твоя, і все, чого прагну я. Любов твоя, любов твоя, потрібна одна. Любов твоя, любов твоя, і все, чого прагну я. Любов твоя, любов твоя. На-на-на-на. На-на-на-на.
Дякуємо, діти.
Thank you, children. Our meeting has come to an end, but we can continue our communications upstairs with tea and coffee. We also have a box today for donations for those who are needy. And may God bless you all wherever you are during the next week. And till our meeting next Sunday.